Shut up and sit down.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you're listening across the world. Welcome to another episode of Just Ball Things. With me today via Skype, as always, is the J-Man, Jack Manuel. How are you, buddy?
Basketball distract me from my sadness.
Yeah, I think that's a big feels for everyone in the world right now, and it's a shame the basketball is now over. But yeah, there's still lots of stuff happening, Jackie boy, as always. My name is Dick Busink, and mate, we had a little bit of a mishap.
We did.
A bit of an incident in the kitchen.
Yeah? Okay, here we go.
Regarding a certain knife and a certain someone's finger. Now, I hurt myself in the I guess the pre-show that not pre-show, but like we were setting up, and you're wondering why I hurt myself, and I'd like to show you. I'd like to show the people if I can get that.
There we go.
It's pretty bad quality.
A little bit. You can see it.
If you look at my thumb from a certain angle, you can see it's like thumb, ridge, and then thumb continues. You can see where the thumb used to be, and it's the worst I've ever done it. Yes, it's not in a good way. I'm pretty sure there's a remnant of thumb in our beef casserole because I couldn't find the chunk that was actually cut off, which is a bit of a mess.
Save me a slice.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, we're also giving that meal to my girlfriend's grandfather. We gave him a serve. I'm hoping he doesn't find thumb in his casserole. That would be... I mean, the guy's 96. I mean, let's hope he can digest that.
I really want to digest that, let alone a 96-year-old. Jeez.
Yeah, so that was my weekend. Obviously, the AFL Grand Final as well. A lot of things have happened in Australia. But let's not talk about that, Jackie boy. Let's put that to bed. Let's talk about some better things. Let's talk about some basketball. As always, you can contact us on Twitter at the JMan JBT or at JBT Nick down below there. You can follow OTG Basketball as well on Twitter at OTG Basketball. They've got an awesome news website and podcast network, which we are part of. So give them a follow at OTG Basketball on Twitter, at OTG Basketball on YouTube, where you can find this show as well. We are on Facebook.com. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/justballthings. Give us a like and a follow there. And you can hit us up on email as well at gbtpodcast@gmail.com. Jackie boy, let's get started here with the Music Manual scale. For those of you who are new, this is a JBT created scale that sums up how likely things are to happen in the NBA. We scale it on alternative fact, Twitter fact, Wikipedia fact, or just a straight up fact. Mate, we had some coaching news during the week. Stan Van Gundy will lead the Pelicans to the playoffs.
Nick, this is a fact because the only way is up for the New Orleans Pelicans. And if this was any other coach, it would be a fact as well. But I guess the nuance within that is how good of a coach is Stan Van Gundy and how far can he take this Pelicans team? Stan Van the man. Now, I'm hoping if B-Ball Reference doesn't have coaches, they need to, and let us, work all the nicknames because we are the nickname kings here at JBT. So Stan Van the man, obviously a great coach and was hired for his defensive acumen that was alluded to by Woj and David Griffin and such. Now, the defense from the New Orleans Pelicans last season was lackluster to say the least. The number one key thing is can Stan Van Gundy engage Zion Williamson in a way where he becomes a defensive force that we know is in there? He obviously was unfit and just had mishaps along the way. Shouldn't have even played, Nick. Shouldn't have even played.
Yep.
For those that don't know the inside joke, listen to JBT from 3 months ago. It feels like pre-pandemic. It might have been.
I know. It's crazy. I mean, to feel like this is the same season Zion Williamson got injured. It's weird. It's been over a year of basketball. It's been great.
Absolutely wild. But I think Stan Van Gundy is going to be great. I think that he has an ability to relate to people and in a way that I think few coaches do. I think Blake Griffin, I was doing a little bit of research. He made some comments about the fact just before he's firing, he's like, Stan actually cares about us as people, not just as basketballers. And that's the thing I think as coaches that obviously that sometimes get lost to the wayside. And he obviously has an established relationship with JJ Redick. I think that those two are going to establish a culture, a culture of accountability on both ends of the floor. Obviously, Brandon Ingram, I think, has good defensive capabilities as well. I'm just really intrigued to see how far you can lead them. Stan Van Gundy could lead this team as high as a 4th seed. There is potential aplenty. Obviously, what the makeup of this roster is. Drew Holiday's been bandied around in so many damn trades, and I've spoken about it on so many damn episodes of the Brooklyn Buzzer. It's almost lost all meaning. But in saying that, he would be a key part of that defensive identity. Derek Favors and the growth of some of the young guys, Jackson Hayes, Brandon Ingram's still young, Lonzo Ball's a good defender, Josh Hart's a good defender. So to me, Stan Van Gundy's obviously going to lead to the playoffs, Nick. It is just how high, and they need to get it all working there. And I think Stan Van the Man is going to be the man to do it.
This is a bit more of a tough one for me, because the Western Conference is good. Surprise, the Western Conference is good, and you think that the Grizzlies, the Suns, possibly the Kings, Pelicans, obviously, T-Wolves will want to make a big statement with their number one pick, and obviously Karl-Anthony Towns is still very, very, very good. The Warriors, that's literally every team that didn't finish in the playoffs almost, except for the Spurs. Yes, I am discounting the Spurs. That is every single team that did not make the playoffs that will be wanting that eighth seed. There is not a clear dud in the West, which was always the Suns, was always the Kings, was always, the Pelicans to an extent. But you're going to see the Warriors. You're going to see the Warriors break the playoffs. Jazz may fall off a little bit, but I honestly don't see that. Mavericks did make the playoffs. They're going to get better. Trailblazers will want to get back into that position as well. I don't think there's enough spots for the Pelicans. And so, especially given that I'm putting the Warriors ahead of the Pelicans, I'm putting the Mavs ahead of the Pelicans. We talked about the Mavs and the Warriors sort of in the same vein last week. The Grizzlies are going to want to absolutely 110% prove themselves. But the Grizzlies might be in the same, maybe in a bit worse position than the Pelicans. So I put the Pelicans ahead of them. My point is the West is stacked. You bring in a team in the playoffs, you got to take one out. And I'm struggling at the moment because I maybe the Thunder. Maybe the Thunder is the team, the team that moves. Depending on, it's so hard to say. We don't know what these teams are going to look like in, a couple of months' time. Do the Pelicans decide to move off, Drew Holiday, for example, see what assets they can get for him? This team may not be the same team that we see come the start of the season. Whether what happens to the Golden State draft pick. A lot of speculation, draft news about that. Obviously, the draft's not too enticing for a lot of teams. But there are moves to be made, and the Pelicans have made a signing that puts them in the best position to get to the playoffs. There are just so many teams that are in that as well. Obviously, Zion's health is pivotal. We're seeing some great highlights from Brandon Ingram. See if he can, see if him and Zion can really work together, because I would love Zion to have the ball more, but Brandon Ingram wants to solidify himself as the man, as, the usage rate of, 30 plus. And so how will that dynamic work in, Stan Van's defense will certainly help improve this team. So they will improve. But will they make the playoffs? I'm a little bit more hesitant than you. You seem to think it's a certainty that they'll make the playoffs. So I'm not so sure. I just see a lot of teams who I've got a bit more faith in, I guess.
That's fair. I guess you make good points. You can make a case for goddamn near any team in the Western Conference, like you sort of mentioned there. I think that while I think the teams that are probably already in there, OKC is the easy one. Golden State is near certainty if they stay healthy, and they obviously do have a better case. We were arguing for them in terms of championship status in our last episode, so that's a given. I think teams like Portland, and to get a little bit spicy, even a Houston could even drop off. I think that now
potentially you're right. I mean, they're going through a lot of change, so it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose some of their role players, Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, these sort of guys get traded, or Tillman Furtada, as I like to call him, decides to offload them to save a little bit of cashola because Donnie T's not elected anymore and he can't borrow any more money. sad Tillman. Then who knows what could happen with that franchise? I think there's a lot of question marks surrounding them. But Nick, you did make a point about the fact that the league is going to be back in a couple of months. I forgot to put this in the doc, so let's have a little bit of a quick chat
about it now.
Let's have a quick chat about it now. Were you shocked to see that the league could be returning on December 22?
Oh, yeah, I was. Given I had completely disregarded a Christmas Day game from my mind. Like, that was not a possibility. And here we are. Like, this is crazy. I mean, I love it, for sure. The players might not love it so much, especially the likes of the Lakers and the Heat, who only get really less than 2 months of off season. That's going to hurt.
2 months, yeah.
Well, I mean, like there's still going to be preseason stuff, so their season will start in less than 2 months. Like the season will start, but their season will start much earlier. We're obviously seeing like a lot of scrimmage games that are happening now, and other teams have had, especially teams like the Wizards, like the even like the Nets to a lesser extent. Have had longer, I guess,
the Bulls and the Hawks.
Anyone who didn't make the bubble, obviously, and then obviously those who went out early in the playoffs. That's still like a good solid. There's still a good solid 2 months of playoffs, and so that level of rest. Coming off an unprecedented season where you had this little break, you had to get back into game shape, which a lot of teams and a lot of players did very well. I sort of went the opposite of what I was thinking. I thought everyone was going to look lethargic and, but not the case. So you had to get back into game shape fitness, and then the teams that have obviously the league only ended 3 weeks ago. And now they're getting asked to play as early as December 22nd again. That seems way too soon. I would have put my money on March, as late as March, just to push out, vaccine research, and the world in a pandemic is such an ever-changing world. Every day there's new information, and every month there seems to be, we're taking steps further. Can America get this crisis sort of even under control? Because I can't see how they get fans in the stands come December 22nd, and I would have thought that would be the goal of the NBA. I wouldn't have thought that they would want no fans in the stands for their next season, even at the start of the season.
See, what I think that they're thinking is that they don't even think that they could get fans in the stands by March. Yeah, so what is the point? So let's try and get some TV money in and try and get some more games. And then in certain states, if there are restrictions easing and if there is a certain amount of control, then they might let certain amounts of fans in there. Obviously not in certain, I don't know, where the waves of crisis are in terms of COVID in America, but I honestly do agree with you to an extent. I think that it is shocking. I wasn't necessarily thinking as late as March, though I was thinking MLK Day, mid-January, and I thought that would have been a good way to signify and start the new basketball season. And I think also it coincides nicely with the social justice deficit they're trying to make, and obviously we've spoken about that before. We think the players are doing a lot, the league probably isn't doing enough. But in saying that, I do get this because, teams like the Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks, these teams that are probably on the fringes of the playoffs, haven't been playing basketball since March and till December. And To be honest, it's a beneficiary to maybe even my team, the Brooklyn Nets, and a team like the Golden State Warriors. Teams that have had that rest and that are going up against contenders like the Lakers, like the Heat. But now KD is fit, Kyrie is fit. Obviously, Karras and such were playing in the bubble, but it wasn't totally as strenuous as the likes of the teams that made the finals and the Eastern Conference finals and those sort of teams. So for me, it's almost a benefit, and I shouldn't be complaining about it. But overall, I hope this doesn't lead to increased injuries. I know we've mentioned this on a previous podcast, and we sort of thought okay, are the increased amount of games in the bubble going to lead to increased injuries? And to an extent, it somewhat did. There were injuries, but I think some of it was out of control in terms of some of my ankle injuries. I don't remember. I think actually Russell Westbrook had calf injuries as well. So I think that it needs. But I did also read that apparently the All-Star game isn't going to happen, and instead they're just going to have a 2-week break to let players recuperate. However long that is enough. Now, it's obviously going to keep developing, and by the next episode, we could hear that it's December 29. We could hear it's Christmas Day. But as of this point, I agree. I was shocked. I as a fan, I'm enthused and I'm excited because I'm already missing basketball, and especially now that the AFL season's over too. It's like, all right, go Everton. But other than that, there's not a lot of sport in our lives. So for that point, I'm really excited. But I also do worry about the well-being of the athletes. And to me, we saw this season, even without the likes of Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, these superstars who were injured the entire season, the season still went gangbusters and was still a massive success. You now have the likes of your best players all fit and firing. You need to make sure that their well-being is the number one thing. And we hear it's going to be a 72-game season. That's what they're aiming for. It's all about the money at the end of the day, Nick. The NBA is a business. They apparently lost $1.5 billion despite doing the bubble. Obviously that would have been something like $4 billion if they didn't do it, $3 or $4 billion. It's a business at the end of the day, but I hope that the precautions are in place, and I hope that the players and the NBA Players Association is being consulted. And if my boy Kyrie is making some notes, then you better listen up, because that guy actually knows what's going on, and he thinks about the welfare of the players, and he's not a freaking disruptor, Mr. Adrian Wojnarowski. I'm going to point at you.
Oh, geez, going at Woj himself. That's good for our brand. So the injury concerns are the biggest thing, because I've seen this in the in the Premier League at the moment, the English Premier League. A lot of teams, like City, for example. I don't want to make this all about Manchester City, but it is.
Sergio, Jesus,
they're all
Diaz.
They're not Diaz. Diaz is injured, but we have so many injuries coming out of last season. Kevin De Bruyne, Aguero, like you mentioned, Gabriel Jesus. I'm not going to mention names because people probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But this is because there was about a month between our last game and our first game. That was, generally because we're so successful and that our tournaments ran really late and we went really far in the tournaments. But I'm glad I could do that on this video platform. And then the Premier League started up. So a lot of Premier League teams who weren't in these competitions, who weren't good enough to be in these competitions, because they're not the Europe's elite, whatever. They had a longer break. Obviously, you're seeing teams like Leeds United, Aston Villa, Everton come into this league and start firing. It's not surprising given the rests that they had, and then you're seeing teams like Liverpool and United. Could that happen, Chelsea?
Yeah. Do you think, Nick? Do you think you can, like I sort of mentioned, could you see a team like the Golden State Warriors going on like a 10-game winning streak?
For sure, I can see the players, teams like the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, obviously the Heat. But even that conference final echelon, because there was such a big break, because you had the break and then you had the bubble, and then if you didn't make the bubble, that's just longer break. That is a huge break. By the time that they come back to basketball, if it does happen in December, they've had since March off. It was March? It was April? Doesn't matter. It was March. Yeah. It was March. That's crazy. That is such a long time. And the whole rest versus rust. Rest versus rust.
Yep.
I don't think applies when it's 9 months. They've had such a long time to fully recover, and then such a long time to fully prepare as well. So when you're talking with these very long stretches of time, I think the time off definitely helps. So I think you can see a Golden State, absolutely, kill it. Even the Suns, to a lesser extent, they obviously didn't make the playoffs, but they had that bubble was so good for their belief, and so you're gonna see teams like this absolutely fire. Maybe the Hawks. I think you mentioned them before. Yeah, I think you mentioned them as a team that could potentially go on a run early in the season. It'll be interesting to see how those storylines sort of progress.
Yeah, it's something we'll keep an eye on, no doubt at all. Nick, we'll move on to the team that we touched on a little bit there, the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, obviously, they won the championship. They did it in fine style. And I put to you, my friend, the Lakers' success indicates that size still matters in the NBA. We all know that size still matters in so many other facets of life, to us especially. But in the NBA, do you think that the Lakers winning the chip, does it mean that, the bigs are back? We need to have size.
I thought this was going in another direction. Not a sexual direction, Jack. Get your head out of the goddamn gutter. In a franchise's big sort of situation, which I think we've spoken about before. Like, is the relevance of the franchise, and obviously it is still massively relevant. I don't think this is. You see this a lot. You see a team win the championship, and you see it in AFL all the goddamn time. Like, it's the copycat. Yeah, like it's the whole, even to a point like this coach has won a title or has established like a very good title run, and then all their assistants just go and coach teams. Like, you saw that with Alex Clarkson.
And I mean, Indiana hired the Toronto Raptors assistant. Sorry, yeah.
His name escapes me, but yeah, assistant under Nick Nurse.
I don't want to say the reason why I didn't put it in the doc. I'm like, can't say this bloke's name. Yeah. I'll let Corey Walker, Indiana Pacers fan. I'll let
other people talk about him. It's like, that's how you say this name. Then we talk. But yeah, you see that all the time. I'm not sure that this is going to be adapted by a lot of teams, because it takes such a special set of personnel to be able to pull off what the Lakers have done. Not every team has an Anthony Davis and a LeBron James. The only reason this works is because Anthony Davis is as dominant as he is, and LeBron James is as good a playmaker as he is. He can find people in that sort of dunker spot. As we're seeing in these highlights now. The rebounding and all that is obviously part and parcel with playing big, but the statistics will always win out if you're constructing a team in that vein, and so. The 3-point shot is something that will not just be going away. It is not something that is going to be phased out because we saw the Lakers win a championship.
Lakers were a great 3-point shooting team, though.
No. That's right. But you can only do what the Lakers do with a special sort of talent on their team. Whereas you can find shooters in this league. Obviously, you need to have your superstars that can step up in big moments. Your Dames, obviously your LeBron Jameses and your Jimmy Butlers, your
Kyrie Irvings.
Yes, exactly. But it's not like players are going to go out and find, your Dwight Howards, your Zubats, like they only work, your JaVale McGee's. They only work because they are with these specific players, and I need to make that clear that it is specific players in Anthony Davis and LeBron James.
Specificity.
And not everyone has that. By all means, if you do have that, then it seems to work. We've seen it. We've also seen shooting teams win many times. Yeah. One team specifically. It's can't remember their names, Jack. It's escaping
the
me.
Walden State Warriors.
But I don't think this is as transcendent a shift as that will be. So people aren't going to just start playing big now. I think you're still going to see a lot of small ball.
I think you're on the right track, Nick. And I think the way I would put it, and not to make it sound reductive, talent matters. It's as simple as that. As long as if you have a player as good as Anthony Davis, who's a top 5 player in the NBA, LeBron James, the best player in the NBA,
then you play big. Like if you've got two of the best big players in the league who are impactful, then yes, you play to your strength. You play big.
Yeah, and that's where coaching comes into play, leadership comes into play. You need to be able to find a way to make your talent maximize the talent that you have on your roster. The Brooklyn Nets aren't going to play DeAndre Jordan and Jared Allen at the same time. Because it just doesn't work. They don't have the diverse skill set that Anthony Davis does, who plays like a point guard, even though he's 6'10", 6'11". LeBron James 6'9", and is a point guard. He literally is a point guard. He led the league in assists. So if you want to he could have been All NBA at the point guard position. He made All NBA, but he wasn't point guard because he's not 6'3", 6'4". So to me, Nick, it's all about talent. Like if you're talking about the Nuggets, they have size, but they don't have the defensive sort of acumen of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Yep. But Nikola Jokic is a transcendent talent in his offensive capabilities. And he has Jamal Murray, and that pick and roll combination is where you go, all right, these guys are going to have potential to really be a championship winning team, a contending team for a very long time due to their age, due to their style, and due to their talent. Yep. Talent. That's all that matters, Nick. Talent and health. I think that, again, we don't mean to just simplify it to the just basic points of sport, but you look at any sport in terms of who has the most talent on their roster, who the most depth, and then who is healthiest at the most important times. You look at leagues across the world. Obviously Man City and Liverpool right now. We're going to make comparison points because I think people actually like to listen to other sport comparisons on this podcast. But in saying that, you look at the Lakers were healthy at the most important time. Obviously the Heat had Jimmy Butler, but Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic went down, and Jimmy Butler was that good that he could still drag them to a 6-game series. If the Brooklyn Nets have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving healthy in July, is that when the finals are going to be? I have no idea. But when it really matters, then I think that they're going to be a very good team because those guys have proven that they can put it up on the biggest stage. But if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are continuing to have injury issues, then you can't necessarily, as good as Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie are and Joe Harris are, you can't rely on those dudes. Yeah. It's maximizing talent, maximizing health, coaches, behind-the-scenes stuff. It's, again, don't mean to be simplistic and reductive about it, but sometimes, Carlo Ancelotti said it when he was talking about James Rodriguez. He's like, the best players don't need to adjust. There's football, there's a ground, and you go play. That's sport. There's the ground, there's the arena. You put the good players in, they go play, and they stay healthy, and they step up in the big games. Then you're in with a chance to win that Larry O'B.
It's mobility for me, in terms of like a player's skill set, that is the most important. Because if you can be 8 foot and move like any of these players, this is what I mean. So like, basketball is a game where size will always matter, but it's a size sort of like mobility ratio, and over time, given it feels like human genetics and evolution that happens in a matter of 20 years, which is not the case. But you get these freak athletes like your LeBron James, like your Anthony Davis, like your Zion Williamson, who defy all logic, are huge, and are incredibly fast. Like Shaq was exactly that sort of dominance. So fast, so strong. And, 6'11", 6'10". How tall is Shaq there about? I don't think
he was 7.
Was he 7? I didn't think he cracked the 7.
I'll find it.
But you get these unicorns. That's why people were so excited about Porzingis, because he moved very quickly, very smoothly, shot so smoothly, and still shoots so smoothly, and was 7'3" or something. He's huge. And
Shaq 7'1".
Oh, there you go. I didn't think he was over 7. Maybe. Anyway, doesn't matter. I always see the photo with him and Yao Ming, and I was just he can't be 7 foot. And it's just
Yao Ming's 7'6".
Yeah, he's so big. He's so big. Anyway, so you see a lot of players. It's just like, if you've got the size and the skill set, then you're obviously a transcendent player. It's this ratio that you need. It's this fine balance that you need to make. And it seems that year after year, as we keep getting these draft prospects, they keep getting bigger, they keep getting goddamn faster and stronger. Within, maybe 50 years, we might have, a net average of much higher in the NBA. And I'd like to see that metric to see how it's fluctuated over the years. Because obviously you get more players enticed, or more people of height enticed to NBA earlier. They might be like supremely athletic. You get better quality players into the league that inspires more people. Blah, blah, blah. The cycle continues. And, that's why generation by generation, the talent pool keeps getting better. And it's just a matter of, it's the natural progression of things. And so, yes, I still think size does matter, but it's to a point of mobility.
Yeah, I'll finish with, just to piggyback off what you were sort of saying in terms of just the generational sort of thing. I read a really good article last year in ESPN Baxter Holmes about specialization within sport and focusing on the NBA and how that's almost ruining athletes in a way, because they, when we were kids, obviously we're not that old, you would grow up in a way like you play cricket, you'd play soccer, you'd play AFL, you'd play all these different sports, and then you wouldn't necessarily be honing in on one, because you would lose the mobility within your body and within your muscles. Whereas if you are in the AAU system, or you are highly specialized from a young age, and you're playing games after games after games after games, you can't take it. And you've played a certain amount of games up to the point where you're 16 that, say, LeBron James or Vince Carter would have played up to the point when he was like 22 years old. So to me, yeah, it's a fascinating conversation to have. And, I like going on these tangents on the podcast, but we'll get to LeBron James, Nicholas. And Nick, I put to you, there was an article in The Athletic talking about agents, and they were throwing shots at the king. LeBron James has too much power in the league.
I saw this. I saw a lot of talk about this as well. And one point that was brought up, obviously it's not my take. One point that was brought up is that a lot of people are just jealous of LeBron James in how much power he has on and off the court. And I think that is 100% true, because of the overwhelming praise that he got as well, there was some hate. And these are from players' agents. And not only is LeBron James taking over, the NBA world, the playing world, he is also part of an organization. And, I don't know how the ownership is broken down with Rich Paul. But it seems that LeBron James has a monopoly on the agency sort of market. And that does lend him a lot of power, but it's not something that it's something to be coveted, and it's something to be jealous of for sure. And I think this is what happens. He's worked hard for the success that he has. He obviously has this sort of dynamic personality and obviously it's an absolutely killer player that has boosted his brand on and off the court, allowing him to do a whole multitude of things. So yes, he may have a lot of power, but it's not like it's undeserved, and he's played it so savvily. That's not a word, but he's been very.
I would have. I'm like, I think it's a word.
Savvily? I'm looking it up, but
I'll jump in, because I agree with a lot of the things that you're saying. You earn the power that you work towards, and LeBron James, since he was 16, was touted as being this messiah and savior of basketball, the next Michael Jordan, which he obviously not skill set wise, but he literally is. The GOAT conversations we've had before on this podcast. I will agree that with some of the points that the agents did make, and obviously they are coming from a standpoint of it's like, that is my competitor. I'm competing with him for clients, for money at the end of the day.
It's almost political. Like they are the like he is the opposition. I need to shit on him, like if that makes sense. Like, yeah, savvily
a word.
It is a word.
Yeah, there you go.
Savvily is a word. Yeah,
but I will say in that respect, I do agree with certain points, because I will be like, oh, come on, man, come on, LeBron, where he crafts his image in a way with. He has a media empire, he has a business empire, which he's created himself, and he's allowed to do that. So he has the routes and the outlets to be able to go, cool, I can put out content in my way, in my own vision, rather than having it diverted by, say, an ESPN if I were to do an interview with them. Or if he were to jump on JBT and we were to twist all the quotes, take him out of context. LeBron, we wouldn't do that, mate. If you want Uninterrupted to buy us out, mate, we'll sell out to you, my dude. We're happy to be a part of the Uninterrupted network. We'll jump on board with it, and we'll bring all the other OTG podcasts with us. We
have no shame. We will sell out to everything. Sportsbet.com.au.
Doesn't not even relevant anymore. I wouldn't place it. I would paste it on the Richmond Tigers, to be honest. But in saying that, I understand where some hate comes from, because me and you are massive LeBron stans. But we also we get a bit tired of some of the shenanigans on and off the court. I want my damn respect too. Like that quote, I was just like, really? Really? Who is it that's not respecting you? What Twitterati, what LeBron James hater 123469 is hating you on Twitter or whatever? And look, it's a silly thing to discredit him for, but at the same time, we try to remain as objective as possible. When given a topic to sort of speak about on this pod. But at the same time, we love LeBron, and I think that the objectivity from these agents is never going to be there, because, like you mentioned, Nick, they are competing with him for literal money, for literal players, for literal clients. And obviously LeBron James and the whole clutch thing is something that might need to be investigated by the NBA. Don't know. I don't think that's been totally... You look at Anthony Davis, KCP, and LeBron James all on clutch. And what, is Nerlens Noel going to join the team as well? I don't know. And look, there's probably something to look into there. And maybe the fact that LeBron James, because of his stature, just doesn't get that. He's just like, well, we don't want to upset the status quo, because, LeBron James is the driving force of this league. And, I think the thing I'm fascinated about most, Nick, is where it goes to next. And to me, I think that the marketing needs to begin now from the NBA. They need to get in on Luka. They need to get in on Giannis. They need to get in on Zion. Right now, those are the three most marketable superstars for the next decade, 15 years. While KD and Steph are still probably the two best players in the league, I don't think that they're going to be in the league for 3 more seasons at most. And I'll obviously capitalize on their images, on their greatness right now. But going forward, we saw, in the All-Star voting, Giannis and Luka were right up there with the king. So I think that they've got a standing point. They've got a sample size. Look here. We can see these two are your most popular forces, your most marketable forces for the next decade, 15 years. Get in on them now. And I don't think they've been good at that. They've just been like LeBron. Recycle, reuse, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Repeat.
Repeat. I don't know. I might be a little bit too close to it, because I obviously love LeBron James, and it just seems like a lot of salt from these other agents, and obviously it is for money, and they're obviously trying to look out for the best interests of their client, and they've got a business to run. These competitive sort of agents. And their big competitors is taking a lot of the business, so I can understand a lot of the hatred. But at the end of the day, players will move where players will want to move, and LeBron James is such a big draw. Like, if these agents had LeBron James on their books, would they be complaining? Oh, I think I have too much power because I have no. They wouldn't. Of course not. They're just jealous that they don't have someone like LeBron James, and someone as marketable as this man. So. Yeah, just feels like a little bit of Salt Bay. So it just feels exactly like that.
That's fair. That's fair, mate. That's totally fair. I tried to provide an objective side of it, but I agree with what you're saying. Nick, we'll move on to you got the music ready for Brooklyn Bits?
Oh, there's a Brooklyn Bits one. Hold on, let's see if I can get this first go. Yeah. Whoa. I'm glad we've set this up so that you can hear that, because it is a banger. Jackie boy, I'll put this one to you because you can obviously speak about this one for a very long time, and I'm sure have on the Brooklyn Buzz. Brooklyn.
Actually, I did a 70-minute episode.
There you go.
And as with any podcast that I record, the day after news comes out.
Yep, classic. Brooklyn hiring Amare Stoudemire is a savvy move. Was a savvy move.
Okay, so first time speaking about this. Obviously, I've spoken about it behind the scenes with Nick Fay, co-host of the Brooklyn Buzz, a little bit.
JBT is a JBT exclusive. That's what this is.
JBT exclusive, yeah. So this will certainly be one of the sound bites going out there that'll be put on Twitter. I think it is to an extent, Nick. I'm not as everyone was. There were a lot of people who were quite enthused about this move. Reuniting the 7 seconds or less duo, one of the greatest pick and pop, pick and roll duos in the history of the game. I've always had question marks about Amare because I've heard him say some pretty offensive things, to say the least. Now, I'm not sure if you know this, but I did put out on my Twitter, and for those that don't know, Amare has made some homophobic comments on more than one occasion. No, I don't want to label him something based off just a small sample size of 3 or 4 comments. I'm not saying he's a homophobe, but he has made homophobic comments, and he's done it as recently as 2017, after making them also in 2012. Now, again, we don't label people by their worst days, but I think it's worth mentioning to provide the fullest picture of a person, their character, before judging them. It's similar with the Kobe Bryant thing. We all love Kobe, but I think the reason why more people do love him is because he was flawed. Like, he's not perfect, like a LeBron or a Kobe or whatever, or an MJ or whatever. But on Amare, I think his role is as a player development coach, so working with the likes of Jared Allen and Nicholas Claxton especially, I think it's going to provide them with a wealth of wisdom. I think Jared Allen's skill set offensively needs to improve. Nicholas Claxton has a lot of unlocked potential. If both of those guys are still in the roster come 2021, 2020, 2021, I hope it actually is in January, Nick, so that we don't.
Yes. I want it to be the new year so I can just say one bloody name. One. Yeah. Oh, goddamn.
But in saying that, it's the era of collaboration. Kyrie got a lot of hate for the comments that we mentioned on previous episodes of the Brooklyn Buzz and on JBT, saying that, it's collaboration, Jacques Vaughn, Steve Nash, Adam Harrington, Thiago Splitter, these guys. And now you add in Amare Stoudemire. To me, I really want, and I put this on my Twitter as well, and it's down there if you want to follow it, Mike D'Antoni. Reunite the whole 7 seconds or less game, because to me, that's who I really, really want. There are no head coaching jobs left, Mike. Joe Tsai's got a lot of money. He's been making some Alibaba money. That stock is continuing to rise despite the pandemic. We can afford to have you, and I think that it would just... He obviously has a prior relationship as well with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving from Team USA. I am really enthused about that. And I'm also glad, despite the fact that Steve Nash did reach out to Raja Bell, who is currently working for The Ringer and The Ringer Podcast Network. Glad that he didn't say yes, because not a fan after the comments he made disparaging Paul George's honesty in relation to mental health. I wasn't a fan of that. And that's why I wanted to provide the fullest picture of Amare Stoudemire. Now, I'm not going to recount the comments that he did make because I don't think that would be appropriate. Everyone here is big enough and old enough to do some research on Google themselves. But in general, I don't think it's that big of a move, to be honest, Nick, if we're just judging it by, it's an assistant coach. But it's a name, and it's a name that has ties to Steve Nash, and he's a former player, which is cool. But also, I hope as a man and as a person, Amare Stoudemire has grown, because the values of the Brooklyn Nets organization, the values that I hold dear to myself about equality and freedom of expression, I hope Amare Stoudemire doesn't clash with those as well. Or otherwise, I will definitely not like this hire.
I think the Amare hiring is potentially a good one for... He is regarded as like a massive, he was absolute gun in his day, and then sort of it felt like petered off very quickly. It was the injuries. That's right. Yeah. And then he, after his sort of NBA stint, went and played in Israel, I think it was. Yeah. Yep. So I think he sort of still commands a lot of respect in the league, and when you've got the personalities that you guys have, I think that is they're going to see Amare Stoudemire and be like, oh, he's a legit player. a lot of respect there. How much can he coach sort of Jared Allen into maybe taking a few more steps towards the better? Like obviously being a power center himself. That will be interesting. But again, it is an assistant coaching. It is an assistant coach. We'll continue to monitor as the season progresses. Obviously, if we see growth in certain areas, a lot of people sing praise of Amare Stoudemire. I know your predispositions, obviously, from sort of just him being, I guess, a solid bloke. Is he a solid bloke? Jury's still out, I guess. A lot of people may have already made their decisions on whether he's a good guy. But, I mean, not being in the limelight as well might help him a lot. He's not going to be pulled aside for presses and for his comments. That may help him just lurk in the. It doesn't, but it gives him less opportunity to be an idiot. So you're not going to hear anything from him controversial this season, and if it is, then that should be more alarming. Like if he does sort of break, or whatever, because he can just lurk in the shadows as an assistant coach. Because they're not outspoken. You don't hear anything about assistant coaches until they become head coaches. So I think that would be the best move for him, given that a lot of people are obviously out on him.
Yeah, before we move to Wizards woes, Nick, shout out to Kenny Atkinson. Really hope he gets that assistant coaching job with the Clippers. I think he would be an awesome defensive. I think he doesn't get a lot of credit for what he does as a defensive-minded coach. I think he could really bring a lot to the Clippers, and it would make me like the Clippers a little bit more, which is saying something because
you don't want that, Jack.
But I would because I'm a big Kenny Atkinson fan, despite the fact that I've criticised him quite a bit on the Brooklyn Buzz. So taking out those comments for what they were, I am obviously still a fan of his. But Nick, you want to get the Wizards woes music playing, and then we'll get to some video from Mr. Wall as well.
The Washington Wizards is making noise.
I drank some bleach all the way down to the blue, and now I'm starting to feel like Harry Potter.
So many bangers, Jack. So little time. So many bangers. So little time. John Wall's attitude. Actually, let's go the video. This is about John Wall and his attitude. Apparently, let's hear what he's.
A lot of my teammates or anything like that, because a lot of people switch team when the players switch, so they don't really got a legit team like I do.
The Cowboys are currently in first place in the NFC East and can have a pretty commanding lead with a win tonight. But that part is good. But be honest, John. How much have you enjoyed seeing the Eagles and also the Washington football team and also the Giants stumble out of the gate so far this season?
Repeat that question, please. I'm sorry.
How much have you enjoyed watching the other NFC East teams stumble out of the gate so far this season? Because it has been a rough go for Philly, Washington, and also the Giants.
Oh, it's been great. For us, we had a tough schedule early on, so it's been great. So
I've had enough, Jack.
You had to stop it early.
So
I'll say the point while you sigh. I'll say the point. Nick, John Wall's attitude is a worrying sign for the Wizards.
Jack, what is he doing?
To make you happier, play some of the highlights of him doing some workouts in LA because his play looks okay. We won't watch that video again that you had to stop early. It was literally like a 1-minute video, and Nick still had to stop it early because it was not the best optics, if we shall say.
Oh, for sure. He's playing cards during an interview, which he's obviously agreed to do. Come on, man. He's 30 fucking years old. He's not a kid anymore. This has gotten a little bit of news, but not, an overly large amount. This isn't the thing I was supposed to be playing. That's the video I was supposed to be playing. There we go. My bad. I was playing the wrong video. It auto played into the next video. Anyway, I'm glad this hasn't gotten as big of a headline as it should have gotten, because we're the Wizards and who really gives a shit. And this is sort of classic John Wall. We're seeing some nice play from Wall here in a scrimmage game. But I don't think it matters, because talent has never, apart from this season, I should say, talent has never really been an issue for Washington with John Wall and Beal. John Wall obviously brings a lot of players into his play and makes players better, but leadership is the biggest issue for Washington. We haven't gotten it from our coach in God knows how long. Yes, that is a knock on Scott Brooks. And I think Beal is not as fiery as John Wall, and therefore not sort of the fiery sort of leader. He's not gonna, LeBron James yell at you or like Marcus Smart yell at you in the locker room. He'd be more sort of complacent, which is that can bring up some questions about whether he's able to lead a team and whatnot. But I don't think Wall has the maturity nor the leadership to lead this Washington team into anything substantial, even like a deep playoff run, which is good enough skill-wise to do. He does all of this other shit on the side. Like he was in the news before this with the gang signs and stuff. It's just like I've sort of gotten to the point where he's not going to change. And it's a shame, because he is so super talented. I absolutely love watching him play. He's one of the reasons that I started following the Washington Wizards. His play was so dynamic. He's easily the fastest guy in the NBA. Was. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Jared
how it goes.
Fox probably has that right now.
Yeah, right now, of course. Let's see De'Aaron Fox after some knee surgeries and ankle
Achilles.
shit. Yeah, Achilles, whatever. It's bad. It's bad. This is 100% a fact. The attitude is 100% a worrying sign, but it's not surprising. We've seen this before. It's just disappointing because you expect these players to mature as they go on, and you do see that from other players. You see Jason Tatum doing the things that he's doing. He's like 22. Some guys are just born differently, and I don't think that Wall is wired to be this sort of stoic and I guess he's not built to be a leader, not in a sort of modern sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing because, like you mentioned, Nick, he was with Kyrie Irving. Like, there was a conversation about like those two being the best point guards in the NBA, and then him making the comments, we've got the best backcourt in the NBA, and obviously, Stephen, and things change in a matter of moments, and you would think that injuries and career-threatening injuries would make you reassess certain things and make you go, all right, I got to take this shit seriously. I got to really switch on here. My attitude has to be on point from day dot as soon as I attack my recovery. And it just wasn't. And it just hasn't been. And now, obviously, the videos of him cooking Michael Beasley, Kyrie Irving are nice. But like you mentioned, talent has never been a thing with John Wall. It's always been about, okay, how can you put all these things together to lead a team? Because when you are the best player, and maybe some of it is just complacency, Nick, because he's on one of the most inflated contracts in the NBA. And once you get paid, it's just like, well, do I need to keep producing because this contract proves that I was already a good player? I don't need to keep doing it. And his attitude just isn't in the right spot. Now, he could easily, come December 22 or whenever the season does return, go bang, bang, bang. Him and Bradley Beal solidify themselves as like, all right, we're back, guys. Remember what we could do. But I think it's a lot less likely than what probably he and Bradley Beal do think. And I think that they do balance each other out. We've spoken about those two countless times on this podcast. But yeah, it just seems weird because, I guess the saying is a leopard never changes its spots. But yeah, he just keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. It's just like, it's not only immature, it's just stupid. Like, just really. Like, and maybe we're reading into it too much. He's just playing a card game while doing an interview. But, like, it's not like an Instagram live thing. Like, this is on, like, ESPN or some shit.
That's what I mean. Like, he has agreed to do this interview, and he doesn't have the respect to to not play cards during it, like to do other shit. It's worrying. It is, and that's what this is literally what this scale is. It is worrying, and there's a fact. It 100% is, but it's not surprising. I mean, I went on my rant, and ultimately it could not matter if he produces on the court, if he can, I question his leadership because it seems like he's not a likable person. He's had a lot of falling out with a lot of players in Washington, and talent aside, if he wants to be, if he wants to thrust Washington into a very good spot for even a deep playoff run, then he needs to be adaptable. And it seems that he's not adaptable with his sort of personality. So he just clashes with a lot of people. He drives people the wrong way. And that is not what a leader does. He needs to be uniting. He needs to, instead of, my way or the highway. It's, I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully, Nick, it's just a storm in a teacup. But we'll get to our final point. And, we're doing some deep cuts. We're in the off season, so we're finding some deep cuts of quotes. And, I'm always switched on. I'm always looking at Twitter. I'm always looking at Google, Bleacher Report, all those different places, Nick. Nick, I put to you, Andrew Wiggins could be Kevin Durant. Something like that. We're going first take. These comments came from Draymond Green when talking about the defensive acumen of Andrew Wiggins. And he said, he can be all defense, reminds me a lot of Kevin Durant. Now, offensively, Kevin Durant is maybe the most unique, skilled player ever. 6'11" dude who can shoot like Dirk Nowitzki, dunk and pass. But defensively, we saw massive growth in Golden State. Obviously under the tutelage of Steve Kerr, Steve Nash, and many other coaches down there as well. Now, Andrew Wiggins is an athletic marvel. Maple Jordan, apparently. But obviously, being a Canadian version of Jordan is like being an Australian version of Lord. Like, who cares? But in saying that, I'm somewhat higher on Andrew Wiggins in Golden State than a lot of other people. I just think that he could be like Harrison Barnes. And with Harrison, just like their fifth option, and just be in a corner, shoot some threes, cut a little bit, actually play defense and use his athletic talents. Because he's not a guy that has had massive injury concerns. So it's not like he's lost a step or anything. He's still incredibly young. Obviously, that contract is bad. And the reason he got it was because he promised the Minnesota owner and GM, I'll play some defense. And he just didn't. We're comparing two guys, just after talking about John Wall, two guys who are on bloated contracts who have failed to produce after receiving them. Now in Golden State, he's obviously not Kevin Durant, but defensively, can he grow into himself as a defensive player? Maybe. I'm going to give it, what's a low version of Twitter? Well, like Twitter's, okay, I'm going to give it the Twitter new retweet feature, which is absolutely horrific. If for those who, have you been on Twitter since they've installed this new retweet feature?
I mustn't have, because
no. What happens, Nick? What happens is, instead of just doing a straight retweet, you have to automatically retweet, and it takes you to quote tweet someone. And then if you want to retweet, you just leave no typing in, and you click on retweet.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
And it is really annoying. Like, let me just retweet something, and if I want to quote it, I'll quote it for God's sake.
Yeah, well, the retweet with comment is should be the separate option. Yeah.
Absolutely. But so that's the version of Twitter fact that I'm giving it. Very, very light, because he hasn't shown much to us yet. But if he's going to do it in any sort of system in terms of his defense and put all of his talents together on both ends of the floor, if he can't do it in Golden State, then he can't do it anywhere.
This is an interesting point, because we talked about sort of the luck it takes to get drafted into the right spot straight away. And obviously this was in relation to the GOAT debate, how MJ was drafted at just the perfect organization, and obviously everything worked out around him. LeBron James, not so much with Cleveland. I think this is a similar situation in Wiggins, and it's amazing to think that and it's an impossible task to do. But what is the potential of every single player in the league if they were drafted in the perfect spot? And there's so much conjecture about that, but if they can, obviously he was drafted high because he had such high prospects. Physically, he is awesome. He was drafted number 1. Yeah, you're right. Physically, he is so special, and that was sort of brought to light with his like defensive acumen. Like that was one of his sort of, this guy could be such an elite defender. He's got such length. He's got such speed. He's got such strength. Such athleticism. Exactly. And it never came to fruition at Minnesota. And if the Warriors can sort of convert this guy, then I would be. I'm not really singing praises of the Golden State franchise, because we already know that they're a tremendous franchise with tremendous leadership and tremendous winning attitudes. I would be casting my gaze directly to the Minnesota Timberwolves and being like, if this does come to pass, like if he does turn it even just a serviceable player, he wasn't even that for Minnesota. You ruined Wiggins. You let Jimmy Butler go. Yeah, like, how many strikes against this team do you need to hit? I mean, 3. I mean, the baseball. But like, you see what I'm getting at? Like this speaks more of Minnesota's absolute deficiencies than it does of the proficiencies of Golden State, because you need to be changing. Like severely changing something in Minnesota, because there's a reason that these players have not fulfilled expectation and have left. Like it's damning for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but I also don't have a lot of faith in Wiggins, so I'm putting this one as alternative fact. I mean, because the point is he could be Kevin Durant. Get out of here with that shit. Draymond is just vouching for his guy, and I get that. But my God, I thought I came up with stupid shit. I mean, Draymond is just an aggressively good teammate, or just I don't know. Hype guy. He's an aggressive hype guy. Yeah, let's go that. And he wants the best for Andrew Wiggins. We all want the best for Andrew Wiggins, but I don't. He's let me down too many times every year, and this year was a little bit. He converted me. He had converted me because his stretch went for a little bit longer than a week. It went for 2 weeks. It went for 3 weeks, and everyone was just like,
this season.
I was thinking,
as you were
crazy.
Talking, I was like, okay, it was like November. I remember because I was in New York at the time, a little bit before my birthday in November. And I'm like, Andrew Wiggins had put together like a 10-game stretch where he was like the MVP. Basically.
He was so good, and everyone had bought stock in him. And it was just like
this season.
In the first week, I was just like, we'll give it some time. And then he started balling some more, and I was just like, all right, I'm there, I'm with ya. Let's keep this train rolling. And then he did the thing that Andrew Wiggins does, and I can't deal with that again. My heart just can't deal with that again. Wiggins, just lay over and die. Like, just give up. It would be easier on everyone's soul if you stop giving people hope and then letting them down. Or just constantly give hope. Whatever.
Yeah, before I break your heart even more, Nick, let's end this one because I ended with, I guess, 2 heartbreaking topics for you.
Yeah, no, well, it was not...
It's not been a good weekend for either of us.
No, I'm missing half my thumb. Half is a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm missing half my thumb. Geelong lost the grand final. Andrew Wiggins is being Andrew Wiggins. It's just bad for everyone. All right, that just about does it for another week. So we just like to say thank you for tuning in to Just Ball Things. You can catch us as always on the YouTubes at OTG Basketball. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, all of the good stuff. We are also on the podcast on the podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Player FM, Spreaker, Spotify. All of the good ones, we are on there. If you're listening to us on Apple, do us a solid, leave us a rating and review as well. Remember, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. We are a very much a visual podcast now. A vodcast, if you will. That's not bad. Or a vidcast. No, that's bad. I should have stopped. I should have stopped at vodcast. So yes, catch us on YouTube. You can watch all the segments as they happen with us. So remember, it's you guys that make the show great. So we appreciate any and every post heading our way. So until next week,
keep balling superstars.